Shalom, shalom, peace and greetings. Uh, I just wanted to share something with you pretty quick here, if possible, as we prepare for this holy Sabbath, right? Today is, as of this recording, right? It's July 21st, 2023. And I'm just kind of becoming aware of something going on here, being kind of busy myself, but there's some news story or debate about Governor Ron Desantis down in Florida. So this article here, we're going to take a look at it. Let's see the title. Let's see here. It kind of caught my eye. And these people who write these headlines, I'm telling you, they are good at getting your attention. So just know that they know what they're doing. They're experts, right? New Florida teaching standards say African Americans received some, quote, personal benefit, end quote, from slavery. Now, when you see a statement like that, you know, it can cause you to be angry, sad, confused, depressed, whatever, right? So what I want you all to see is that we have to control our own minds, right? Don't let these people control your mind. So am I saying that we can trust this character here, this Ron DeSantis? Certainly not. I don't know anything about this dude personally, except for Florida seems to stay in the headlines now for trying to ban books and make it harder for teachers to teach black history to the children, saying that people can't read this book and that book. I've even heard that, what was that, Song of Solomon? They trying to ban that from the Bible. They trying to ban books about Rosa Parks. This is madness, right? But I want you to see why it's not always easy to, how can I say it, to form an opinion. Sometimes you have to dig into things because they might be outright racist or hateful statements from people that want to basically re-enslave so-called Negroes, right? African Americans, who we know as Israelites, and some of them Moors, etc., right? So it says the new standards backed unanimously by the State Board of Education encompass the controversial 2022 law regulating how race can be taught in schools. Let's see here. It says Florida education officials approved new standards for teaching African American history Wednesday in response to the, quote, anti-woke, end quote, policies touted by Governor Ron DeSantis as critics urged the state to rethink the curriculum, claiming that it, quote, only presents half the story and half the truth, end quote. And that's very likely possible, right? There's so much information, you would have to consume a lot to get the whole picture, but that sounds about right. I know that they try to whitewash the history of slavery in this country, try to make so-called Negroes or African Americans, whatever, think that slavery wasn't that bad, like they did us a favor by raping our women and whipping our backs, right, and putting us on that plantation. You got to be kidding me. However, I want to show you something about these new standards. When it says the new standards, this link here is clickable. Backed unanimously by the State Board of Education, encompass the controversial 2022 law regulating how race can be taught in Florida schools, something that was specifically sought by the Republican governor and presidential contender. Now I'm going to show you these standards, right? I already got them open in another tab here. Now this PDF, I'm going to try to show you this URL up here is www.fldoe.org and a bunch of other stuff after it, right? So FLDOE must stands for Florida Department of Education. That's what I would assume. This document is 216 pages. All right. So you're not just going to be able to go through 216 pages just like that. And so that's what I want to show you. Like, they'll trigger you with these words, right? But if you try to come back and answer quickly without thinking out what you say, you leave the door open to sound like a fool. So I would like to share this wisdom with you today, whether it's this instance of them trying to minimize slavery and the evil that this country has done to so-called African Americans and Negroes, right? And also to the natives who were already here, because some of our people were already here in the Americas, right? And then some of us were brought across the Atlantic Ocean on those slave ships. So it's both. But when they try to trigger you and you try to, if you answer quickly and you don't have all the information, they love to do that to you on purpose so they can try to make you seem unreasonable and irrational. But while we have access to the internet and to these platforms, such as the one we're on now, we should try to use this information sharing capability to showcase our knowledge, understanding, and wisdom rather than our irrationality, emotions, and anger or whatever else. So am I saying that you should never be angry? Of course not. I've been angry on here, right? But our whole demeanor shouldn't just be a continuous stream of responses to their triggers, right? So I'm gonna show you why. So when it mentions about the personal benefit that slavery gave our people, quote unquote, that's on page 6. And I kind of read through / skimmed through, I don't know, maybe like 15 or 16 of these pages before I started this video. But check this out. It says positive. So what they have here is African American History Strand, and you're going to see that phrase a lot. AA equals African American History 2023. So I see it's got the year about this one, but it doesn't have the year about any of these, which means this must be the only one that's had a significant change this year. All right, so they all focused on this. Notice they're not changing anything on Holocaust education, right? You're not going to try to water down the suffering that the Ashkenazi Jews had in the Holocaust, but you want to try to rewrite our history. Ain't that something? But some of this stuff might actually be good, which you may be shocked that I'm about to say. Recognize African American inventors and explorers. For example, Lonnie Johnson, inventor, Macy Jennison, George Washington Carver. And there's a lot more besides them, but it actually wouldn't hurt us as adults and obviously our children, right, to focus on the inventors and explorers. There's a lot more of our people who made contributions to this world and the much greater things than just being enslaved, right? So it wouldn't hurt us to know something like that. So when these people try to trigger us with these titles, we can use the information we find to actually help us not be stressed. Because being stressed all the time is not good for your health. And if it's not good for your health, then it shortens your lifespan. So we don't want to kill ourselves with their manufactured emotions, right? They manufacture emotions to put on us whenever they want to drive a news cycle. No, we're going to control our mind, right? We're going to control how we move. Let's see. Positive influences of contributions by African Americans. Identify African American artists such as Aretha Franklin, Charles White, James Earl Jones, Maya Angelou, whatever, right? Let's keep going. So they got some other good things. Identify oral traditions and folk tales of African Americans. But we're going to scroll down. A lot of this stuff, they got Dr. King's Tuskegee Airmen, Rosa Parks, Barack Obama. Let's get on down to page 6. I'm going to show you what the controversy is about. All right. Here we go. So on page 6, you got this phrase, benchmark clarifications, right? Then here, it says analyze events that involved or affected Africans from the founding of the nation through Reconstruction, which is the period right after slavery. It says here, clarification 1. Now above that, let's start here. Examine the various duties and trades performed by slaves. Example, agricultural work, all right, painting, carpentry, tailoring, domestic service, blacksmithing, transportation, right? So in other words, we did more than just pick cotton. Our ancestors did all of these things and more. It says clarification 1, instruction includes how slaves developed skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. You see that? So let me zoom in a little more. So this is what that ruckus and this emotional article title, right? So they put it to make you think somebody's saying that slavery benefited us more than it hurt us. Well, that's not what I'm seeing in this plan. This plan has 216 pages, right? And you got one paragraph on page 6. And I believe this personal benefit thing is repeated once or twice besides this throughout this book, right? Because the word benefit is in here. It's in here 31 times, but only 2 to 3 times does it apply to the slave trades, such as tailoring, carpentry, painting, etc. So here's my point. Although we're not going to allow these hateful racist, white supremacists, so-called, etc., minimize the suffering of our people in slavery, we're also not going to let them trigger us so that their media companies can get higher ratings just by putting out a title that they know is going to piss us off, all right? So let's think about this. You know I'm not saying that slavery was good for us, so because the scripture says in Exodus 21:16 that they should have been put to death for stealing us and selling us. However, agricultural work, wouldn't it benefit us today if some of us owned grocery stores and the farms that the groceries come from, at least the produce, right? Our own fruits and vegetables on our own farmland. That's called agriculture. So the way I'm looking at this, it could have benefited the man or woman who was enslaved at that time, not as if it was a huge benefit in their life, but hey, maybe they were allowed to grow a little bit of fruit and vegetables for themselves here or there. Or maybe when they got free, they were able to take that skill that they used to use in slavery, and maybe some of them could use it for themselves. That's the way I'm gonna look at it, right? So anybody want to take it further than that, then that's their hateful mindset. But I see this could be true. Let's look. Painting. Okay, nobody wants to be forced to paint for free. But if you know how to paint, can you not paint your own house? Or today, your own automobile? Right. Carpentry. Right? You know how to build something. That can definitely help. You're trying to build your own house. Or build a room addition. Anything right. Tailoring. You know how to alter your clothing. Right? What's wrong with knowing how to tailor your own suit, tailor your own dress, right? Your own pants, whatever it might be. Domestic service, right? So that's not so much. I mean, that was like, just straight out servitude, right? But blacksmithing, that could be a benefit. Transportation. And this is nothing against domestic service workers, but, they used the so-called house Negroes to serve them, right? So that's why I'm not saying that was of any personal benefit, right? But blacksmithing, transportation. So yeah, that's what I see. And let me see if it appears in here again. Hold on, that's something else. Yeah, it's mentioned again here on page 71 for some reason, right? So yeah, I just wanted to bring that out. So let's use wisdom and not let these people trigger us. See, when a document is 216 pages and yet it's like 2 sentences and then another and 2 paragraphs that's repeated, right? So this paragraph and that sentence is repeated twice, as far as I know, in this whole booklet. You have to know what's contained in a document before you let it control your emotions. And I'm doing this because this is what people do with the Bible also. They take 1 or 2 verses, 1 or 2 scriptures, and get a partial picture of what it's saying. And then they build a whole religion or a whole belief system based on nothing but that. When sometimes you got to read 10 verses above something, right? And 2 or 3 after it just to understand what that one verse is really saying. Sometimes you might have to read a whole chapter depending on how difficult it is. It's the same in every aspect of life. If you're going to study contract law, if you're going to study history, or if you're going to study something like this topic we on now, it takes diligence. So I say save your energy, right? And don't add extra stress to yourself, and look for how you can personally benefit from what they're doing. Because there are some other things in this article, before I close out here, that I think are really good. Watch this here. Even if they might be trying to whitewash and make slavery look like it wasn't as bad as it was in the United States, watch this here. Some of the things they say the children should study. Whether they actually will teach them that or not is another subject. But if they actually study this, it would actually be helpful. So I hope some of this stuff is brought out, because in my other video about the African slave trade in Nigeria, right? And I'm probably gonna come with one from about how they was trading in Ghana as well, right? Because it wasn't just Nigeria. Let's see here. Some of the things that it says the students should study. Watch this here. Understand the causes, courses, and consequences of the slave trade in the colonies, right? Identify Afro-Eurasian trade routes. That means through Europe, and methods prior to the development of the Atlantic slave trade. That means when our people were being sold into slavery, well, let's keep looking. Clarification 1. Instruction includes how slavery was utilized in Asian, European, and African cultures. So guess what? You had slavery over there on the east side of the world too. While they try to act like they so perfect. You know, they might have some better morals than Western civilization, but they were trading slaves first. So they don't get a pass on that. So it might be good to study that, right? Clarification 2. Instruction includes the similarities and differences between serfdom and slavery. And number 3, instruction includes the use of maps to identify trade routes. It wouldn't hurt us all to learn a little geography, right? So I don't know if they're really going to teach this in depth, but if they follow the curriculum and teach it for real, you understand? Then our children will know about the slavery that took place in Asia, Europe, and Africa, as well as the slavery that took place in the Americas. And then they'll have a more global view of how that system worked. And what did the scriptures say? And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. You need to know the truth about whatever topic affects you, right? And slavery certainly affects our people. Let's keep going. Describe the contact of European explorers with systematic slave trading in Africa. Now, I know that Ron Desantis and his people have an ulterior motive for this. They want to describe the contact of European explorers with the systematic slave trading in Africa because they want to try to place the blame on the Africans and try to absolve these Europeans of their blame. But we're not going to let them do that. All that means is the Europeans and the Africans, look, the Hamites, right, were guilty. They don't get a pass. If Africans sold Israelites, right, if Hamites sold the Shemites, or if Africans sold Israelites and Moors to these Europeans and sent them over here across the Atlantic Ocean to the Americas, the one that sold us was wicked, and the one that bought us and carried us to the Americas is wicked. Both of them. So see, some people think that Ron DeSantis doing this is going to absolve his people. No, it's not. Whether you buying the slave or selling the slave, right, and forcing them into it. This was not voluntary. This was involuntary servitude. Both of them is guilty. So yeah, I think it'd be good if the children in Florida actually studied this for real. So, but we know they're going to try to put a European slant and try to blame it all on the Africans, right? And then they're going to say Africans were selling Africans. No, they weren't. For the most part, it was Hamites selling Israelites and Moors. Everybody on Africa is not the same nation. And even today, it has 54 geographical boundaries of nations. But even back in the past, everybody that's so-called black is not the same family or nation. No, they're not. And when they talk about the Revolutionary War, they don't say white people was killing white people. They say that the 13 colonies was fighting for freedom from Great Britain. But these are the same people, the exact same family. They had just come from Britain, right? So why don't they call that white on white crime and killing when they fought each other? So miss me with that nonsense. So Africans sold the Israelites and or Moors to Europeans, which means the Europeans and the Africans did us wickedly, and it has been brought to light So yes, I believe this stuff has been of some personal benefit to me, and I hope now it has been some personal benefit to you. Last but not least, examine the evolution of labor force in the use of indentured servitude contracts. See, indentured servitude as a contract. It's still servitude, which looks very similar to slavery, but it's voluntary if you signed the contract willingly. So with that, I hope this has been some edification. Like, share, and subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comment section. And have a good day.